Hey guys, Kristen Pinuel here with Cahaba Counseling in Trussville, Alabama. So I know a lot of you have been asking about how to find a good marriage counselor. So today I'm going to go over 3 things that you need to look for when looking for a marriage counselor that's not only going to match you personality-wise, but also one that will really help make progress for you in your relationship. Because I know several clients have come saying they've gone to marriage counselors and maybe it didn't help or it made things worse. And so I want to give you some tips on finding a good one. So number 1 is training. So all of us who are licensed counselors, we have different licenses depending on what program we went through and what licenses we pursued. So for instance, an LPC is a licensed professional counselor. That means they, have done at least a master's degree. We usually have a lot of postgraduate training as well. But LPC doesn't necessarily mean you would be a good marriage counselor. That simply means they are a counselor, but a lot of them have backgrounds a lot of people who are LPCs have backgrounds in clinical mental health. So that is, treating people, finding out their diagnoses and treating them, whether it be depression, anxiety, PTSD, OCD, whatever that is. But if you are specifically a marriage counselor, you would typically have more work, postgraduate work, and certain types of marriage therapy. So one is Gottman therapy. The Gottman method of marriage therapy is super effective, very prolific as far as there are people, thousands and thousands of counselors around the world that get trained in Gottman therapy. It's very effective, very research-based, science-based. I have like levels 1 and 2 of Gottman therapy. There's also emotionally focused therapy training. So if your counselor has EFT after their name, that means they have been trained in emotionally focused therapy, also very effective. A different lens through which they solve problems, but it is very effective. If someone has that, they've likely spent $10,000 plus on training postgraduate school and hundreds of hours getting that particular training. Also great. Another one is solution-focused couples therapy. This is based on solution-focused brief therapy, and it is very effective with not just couples, but with almost any type of counseling needs, individual, couples, or family. So I use the solution-focused a lot, especially in the early stages when you are setting goals, because the solution-focused, it really helps the counselor constantly look to what is working in the relationship, what used to work in the relationship, and what do you want the relationship to look like in the future. So it's very solution focused, not problem focused. Often I find that if counselors get too stuck into the problem, it ends up almost compounding that versus focusing on the solution, what the couple actually wants to see happen. So the next thing that you want to look for is a personality that fits with yours. Obviously, you want them to be likable, somebody you actually enjoy spending some time with, because you're going to be in that room with them, having some pretty serious conversations, and you want to jive with their personality. But also, they have to have the personality that they are willing to identify challenges or unhelpful patterns, and they're willing to call those out. So good marriage counselors, they can identify these patterns that aren't working, and they have the knowledge and skills to get you from what isn't working in your relationship to what does work. There are so many research-based tools and strategies that we have that can help couples go from unhealthy and disconnected to healthy, connected, and happy in their relationship. And you need to have a counselor who's willing to interject and do that. For instance, if I notice early on a client becoming defensive every time a certain topic comes up, I'm going to bring that to their attention and give them specific strategies, like taking a pause in the conversation and saying back what they're hearing their partner say, versus being in their head and just immediately responding. Or I might say, hey, before you respond, we've got to ask at least 2 curious questions to better understand your person's perspective before you make a statement. So that would break the cycle of defensiveness by either having them paraphrase back the other's thoughts and check for understanding, or asking curious questions to better understand where their person's coming from. A marriage counselor not only needs to know tools and know about the dynamics of communication and connection in marriage, but they have to be able to teach their clients these better ways of communicating and give them the space to practice it, not only in session, but outside of session. So they've got to be willing to interject and redirect when they see you getting off course. So if your counselor just sits there and lets you argue for an hour or spend the whole session just griping about the other person, that's not going to bring about change in your relationship. I think you know that, but just feel validated that if you've ever had that happen, that is not an effective counseling session. You need someone who's going to be able to find out what's not working in relationship and then actively guide you to move in ways that will help your relationship grow and get stronger. If you're allowed to just rehash issues in session in the same way that you're allowed to do it at home or in the same way that you do it at home, then either that person is not fully trained in couples therapy or they don't have the personality to do that. It sounds like their personality could be more suited to individual counseling. Because individual counselors, we listen and we validate feelings, listen and validate, sometimes challenging them, but often the focus is just that that person's reality is fully the reality we're working from, and then we try to help expand from there. But with marriage, so different. This type of therapy, with individual therapy, is very person-centered. But marriage therapy, you have two people who are coming in with two very different sets of experiences, needs, hurts, and communication patterns, both from growing up and even now. And all these unspoken rules from childhood about how to communicate their needs, how to handle conflict, what's important, how to show love. All of those things are coming from two different people in the same room. And so a marriage counselor can't just passively let these things fly, or you're never going to have positive movement. A trained counselor is going to be able to identify all these things and how they are impacting the relationship overall, and then in turn create a solid plan for bringing about the healing and the happiness that that couple is wanting. So are they trained? Do they really know what they're doing, or are they just trying to transfer individual counseling skills to couples work? So this is one way to think about it. A good marriage counselor is going to call you out on your stuff when you're in the wrong. They won't do it early on. They probably will wait at least 3+ sessions before they start really challenging each client, but they are going to make you mad or frustrated at times, at least every now and then. If you've never been frustrated or bothered by your therapist, then they may not have what's best for your relationship as their top priority. They might value making sure everyone is comfortable and making sure that you like them as that higher priority. Because every couple, even my most favorite couples that I work with, even myself, my husband, we all have blind spots. We all have room for growth. And if you are spending your time and money on coming to couples therapy, you want to have someone who's willing to point out the difficult stuff. Someone who is okay with ruffling your feathers every now and then. And I hope that you welcome that, because that really is how change happens. Both people have to be willing to do that. Because if you're never uncomfortable, then you're probably not changing and you're probably not growing. So, are they giving you homework? That's another thing to ask. Are they giving you homework? Are they giving you some direction for incorporating what you are learning in that session and what you just learned that day when you get home? Are they asking you how you are practically going to put what you've learned into action? You've got to have that. Relationship growth happens when we reflect on new knowledge and new strategies and make a plan for how to actually incorporate them into our life and into our relationship. For anyone who has seen a marriage counselor and didn't see changes, or worse, you actually saw problems get worse, I want you to know that this isn't the norm. If you are both willing to do the work, willing to look in the mirror, and willing to take feedback from an experienced counselor, then you will see change. You will. So, disclaimer, there are times when you might have an excellent marriage therapist, but your marriage still doesn't improve. If one spouse is totally unwilling to accept their responsibility for, their part, or is controlling or manipulative or abusive, they have some sort of full-blown personality disorder that is not being attended to, then you could have Dr. John Gottman himself as your therapist, and that relationship is not going to get better, at least not for very long. So just know, you might have had an excellent marriage therapist, but things only got worse. And I have seen that because sometimes one person is growing and getting healthier emotionally, and the other person is staying stuck. And so in those cases, sometimes it actually makes it worse because that person who is getting healthier is able to more and more see and call out the unhealthy dynamics in the other. And in that case, it's okay because you still needed to go through that process to just know that you did everything you can. You gave it your best. So I don't want you to feel down if you're like, but wait, all of these things were true. We had a great counselor. He or she did call us out on our stuff. He did give us the tools. Why was our relationship not getting better? It's okay. That does happen sometimes, but it usually happens when one person is just fully unwilling to look in the mirror and take any kind of accountability. And in those cases, it's okay, though, because you were able to see that that was the reality. Anyway, hope this helps when you are looking for a good marriage counselor, especially here in Trussville or Birmingham. And again, my name is Kristen Pinuel, and let me know. You can email me if you have any questions.